Hello, BookTube. Who's up for a nice bright morning mail haul? It's Thursday. Sunlight is flooding through the room here. I'm trying everything I can to mitigate that backlighting situation. Everything other than get curtains. Okay? I don't want to get curtains. I'm not a big fan of curtains or shutters or blinds or anything like that. I've got two big windows and a side window, and I have been experimenting with everything to decrease this. For instance, I'm doing these videos early in the day when the sun has not yet risen above the crest in the east. So this is all indirect light. I don't know if that's going to help at all. I'll try later today. Later today, it is predicted to cloud up and storm. Maybe that'll be better. But in the meantime, it's not so bad, right? I'm in focus, and you'll be able to see the books, and we can talk about them. And it's an okay stack. Nothing really thick. So probably none of the fall season's blockbusters of history or biography, but some that are quite encouragingly heavy. So there will be some finished copies in here. So let's see what we have here. This first one is. Okay. All right. Well, we couldn't really start any better. This God, I swear. Well, you must know, because I don't know what's in these packages. You must know that this is totally unplanned. This is by Susan McHugh. It's from Reaction Books, and it is Dog. This is a book about dogs. This is from 2004, I believe. This is part of that Animal series. Reaction Books, I think, is reprinting that Animal series that has been out forever and ever in the UK. I think this is the volume on dogs. Dogs are our best friends. They are our oldest, too, for dogs and humans have lived closely together for thousands of years. In this fascinating and up-to-date account, Susan McHugh unravels the current debate about the relationship of dogs and wolves and explores dogs in mythology, religion, and ancient cults as different as those in Alaska, Greece, Peru, and Persia. She shows how dogs today contribute to our lives in a huge number of ways, not only as pets and as guide dogs, but in literature, movies, scientific studies, and in Asia as sources of food. Dog reveals how we have shaped dogs over millennia and how dogs have shaped us. Okay, and she is a professor of English at the University of New England in Maine, in Biddeford, Maine. What can I say? This is going to have, it has tons of illustrations, and those will be really of interest to me. It won't tell me anything at all that I don't know about dogs, and will probably make, typically, no offense to the good professor here, but typically books like this, general survey, popular survey books like this, make several mistakes. That's okay, even if this book doesn't. Even then, there won't be anything that I don't know, but I'm always up for reading something like this, especially now, because I am writing a review of kind of a survey of current dog books. And I think this gets to me just in time to squeeze in a mention. That would be wonderful. The more we learn about dogs, the more interesting the learning gets, I think. Not just in terms of studying their genome, but also their history with humans. I don't think it's a question of thousands of years. I think it's a question of the entire lifetime of Homo sapiens sapiens as a separate species, and maybe before then. I think that dogs have had a very productive symbiotic relationship with hominids for almost as long as for at least 150,000 years. Not 17,000 years, or the 7,000 years that is often given as the figure for the length of time for domestication. Domestication doesn't even enter into this. There's a totally different process from cows or pigs or chickens. It doesn't even enter into it. This is, as Conrad Lorenz pointed out 100 years ago, this is a partnership. The only one that humans have. And I think it's as old as humans are. So I don't know that I'll get anything deep diving in this book. I don't think that's what this series is for. But I think it's amazing that it's the first book I get, and then it comes to me. That's just wonderful. All right, so this mail haul actually can't start on a better footing. So let's just see. It's all downhill from here, but let's see how far we go. Let's see how far down we go. Okay, this is from the brainy folks at Harvard University Press. This is certainly an October book. Yes, this is a mid-October book. This is called Ingenious. The Unintended Consequences of Human Innovation by Peter Gluckman and Mark Hansen. Ingenious. As humans evolved, we developed technologies to modify our environment, yet these innovations are increasingly affecting our behavior, biology, and society. Now we must figure out how to function in the world we've created. Over thousands of years, humans have created ingenious tools to gain mastery over our environment. We learned to cook. We built shelters, settled into communities, discovered how to exploit the land, agriculture. Those of you who've read Sapiens will know that's a big part of a big and fascinating chunk of Sapiens is how agriculture has shaped humans instead of humans shaping agriculture. The ability to communicate, accumulate knowledge collectively, and build on previous innovations has enabled us to cheat nature, not just by creating niches for ourselves, but by continuously modifying them, not only for survival, but for comfort and leisure. Innovation has allowed us to thrive. The trouble with innovation is that we can seldom go back. There's that moment every day now, usually at around this time in the morning. There's that moment where I am sneezing and I wonder, okay, is this just a momentary inconvenience or am I going to lose 2 hours and bleed on the floor? I just have to hope. There's no way to know. There's no way for me to tell from how I'm feeling whether or not it's going to be a few sneezes to clear out the nasal passages from the dust of opening a book package, or whether it's going to stop my life for a long and very terrifying period where after the second hour, you honestly believe you're going to die from sneezing. But we shall see. We're just going to drive on here. We invent, embrace, and exploit new technologies to modify our environment. Yet when we modify the technology to cope with consequences, to protect ourselves from dangerous pathogens, for example, we embraced cleanliness and invented antibiotics, which have led to a rise in rates of autoimmune disease and antibiotic-resistant bacteria. Okay, so this book is going to explore those questions. Will we wait passively to see where technology takes us, or do we want to be more deliberate in the controls we apply to it and how? Interesting. Okay, I don't think there's any way back. I don't think there's any way to apply those controls. I think that's been tried, and it's just disastrous. But, okay, a fascinating subject, as always, with Harvard University Press. All right, so let's press on here. Doesn't look like the sneezing is continuing. That's good. It'd be a horrible thing if simply watching Jason Harrigan's channel made it possible for him to communicate a head cold or the dreaded man flu. Isn't watching his channel burden enough without it being actively communicable? Let's see here. Okay, this is by A.D. Miller. This is Independent Square, the American publication of Independent Square. Once a senior diplomat in Kiev, Simon Davey was ousted after a lurid scandal. Back in London, how are we doing with the lighting there in the background? Back in London, still struggling with the aftermath of his disgrace, he is traveling on the tube when he sees her. This woman, Olesia, is the person Simon holds responsible for his downfall. He first met her on an icy night during the protests on Independence Square. Full of hope and idealism, she could not know what a crucial role she would play in the dangerous times ahead, or in Simon's fate, or what compromises she would have to make to protect her family. When Simon decides to follow her, he finds himself plunged back into the dramatic days which changed his life forever, and he begins to see that her life has not been what he thought it was, and neither has his own. My. Okay, great. And this is the blurb. The pub sheet comes out with blurbs from American reviewers about Snowdrops, a previous book, and this book comes out in early February. So I don't need to think about Independence Square in the upcoming months as I quarter in on October and start to zero in on the end of the year. So I'm not thinking about it. I'm thinking less and less about 2020 books all the time. So let's hope that the rest of this mail haul is not 2020 books. I won't have much to say about them, except to know whether or not they're interesting. Goodness gracious. Okay. All right. Okay. All right, this is a 2020 book as well. Or is it? No, no, this is November. I am going to have to deal with this year. This is an English language translation of Serotonin by Michel Houellebecq. Utterly talentless hack provocateur. I have read everything of his that has come out into English. It's all terrible. And I was I was wondering, of course, I was wondering whether or not one of his recent books, Submission, which is all Islamophobic race baiting, religious baiting, I was wondering if that was going to succeed in what was clearly the author's intent, which was for someone to kill him about this book, for him to die as a result of this book. And it didn't happen, but is that kind of unbelievable, just twisted, corrupt cynicism on the part of the author that makes me hate his books. They are not about writing at all. They are not about crafting anything, especially as a novel. Instead, well, let's see if this tells me. Does this tell me? And oh god, all right. Well, it's got tons and tons of blurbs from my colleagues in the review trade about this guy, but it doesn't. The sell sheet doesn't actually tell me anything about this book itself, about Serotonin. Let's see if the inside does. Yes, a scathing visionary novel from the great provocateur, taking aim at the moribund European Union and the vanquished white male. This book is a scathing, frightening, hilarious, raunchy, offensive, politically incorrect novel about the current state of Europe, Western civilization, and mankind in general. Deeply depressed by his romantic and professional failures, the aging hedonist and agricultural engineer in the lead protagonist spot of the novel feels he is dying of sadness. His young girlfriend hates him, his career is pretty much over, and he has to keep himself highly medicated to cope with day-to-day city life. The protagonist decides to head for the hills, returning to Normandy, where he once worked promoting regional cheeses and where, too, he had once been in love, and even, it now seems, happy. There he finds a countryside devastated by globalization and European agricultural policies, and local farmers longing, like the narrator himself, for an impossible return to what they remember as a golden age, the smaller world of the pre-modern era. As the farmers prepare for what might be an armed insurrection, it becomes clear that the health of one miserable body and a suffering body politic are not so different. Really? Yeah, I bet they are. In the end, and that all concerned may be rushing toward a catastrophe a whole drugstore's worth of antidepressants won't be enough to make bearable. Okay, all right. Lineup is Nobel. That's all I have to say. That's what... okay, this comes out in late November. I am going to put it off until then. So this isn't just a Brexit. By the sound of it, I haven't read it. The description could be wrong, could be off. There could be all sorts of emphases I'm not seeing. But by the sound of it, it sounds like not only a Brexit novel, but a Little Britain, the French equivalent of a Little Britain, a brainless, xenophobic, future and progress hating Brexit novel. We shall see. I'm very disturbed by the title. So we shall see. We shall see. I will read it, and I will, believe it or not, despite the sound of this rant, I will read it with an open mind. I go into every one of this author's pieces of crap with an open mind, and I'm always disappointed. I don't ever see anything there. I have a fairly large tolerance for provocateurs. Anyway, we shall see. It could be that I am just suffering from protracted Nobel post-traumatic stress disorder, since the Nobel Committee started religiously giving the highest, most prestigious literary award in the world, specifically to provocateurs, regardless of their literary quality. They had a number of those almost in a row, and that maybe I was still suffering from that. Although I have also read this guy's, and what was it? Platforms? What was his big one? That one I was. What was it? Elementary Particles. The Elementary Particles of his. When that was, everybody was talking about that and raving about it. Everyone in the entire world raving about it. And I got the advanced copy of it and read it and thought, what on earth is going on here? I actually got a French copy, thinking, okay, this has to be like the biggest indictment of a bad translator that I've ever heard of. But no, the French version was absolutely god awful. It was just we'll see. We'll see. I'll report back. Okay, so this next one is a September book. Getting a little bit long in the tooth for September books. This is one long poem. This is a slim volume of poetry. No. Okay, all right, that's odd. Well, anyway, this is by Sylvie Baumgartel, and it's called A Song of Songs. Song of Songs, a poem. Now, that is the subtitle. The designation is a poem, but the book is prose. This is just paragraphs and single sentence paragraphs. This is prose. There's no poetry in here. So I don't know what explains that. Maybe it's allegorical. Let's find out. There are things we don't talk about. They come in two categories: the mundane and the explicit. That which will bore, that which will corrupt. Waiting for lotion to soak into your legs, the desire to give your entire body over to someone else. In her debut book of poetry, okay, that's wrong. There's no poetry in here. There's only prose in here, which comes out on September 24th. So it's already out. It came out on Tuesday. The author strays from neither. Drawing on the biblical Song of Solomon, Baumgartel brings the themes of love and devotion into a new space, one of desperation and domesticity, wildness and wonder. All 73 pages of Song of Songs take place in the speaker's home, where in her head, as she pleasures herself, as she hangs laundry to dry, as she eats chickpea salad, we're with her as she panics about her acute awareness of her own breathing, ponders whether she has multiple personality disorder, and asks how people only just now have discovered the reason for the holes in Swiss cheese. So this author has to be a millennial. Just has to. She lives in Santa Fe, New Mexico, and her poems have appeared in the Paris Review, the Nation, the New Yorker, the New York Review of Books, Symposium, Raritan, Harvard Review. Fantastic. Can't really tell from the tiny photo how old she is, but she must be. I think I know almost everything there is to know about her biography. If those are the things that panic her. More than anything, we're there for her devotion to a single you, for you, because of you. Everything the speaker does is for this unidentified person, her every action at the service of another. Over the course of Song of Songs, Baumgartel forces us to question the bounds of devotion. What is the meaning of a life lived not for oneself, but for another? Okay. All right, so this is some sort of essay? 73 pages, an essay? Something like that. I'm confused about the mistake in the pub sheet here. But I will read the thing anyway. I mean, the pub sheet, despite the glaring error, there is no poetry in this thing. I flipped through the whole thing. Despite the glaring error, the pub sheet did go on to make this sound interesting. So, well worth a read, especially since 73 pages is not going to take me very long. So, that's odd, though. I'll have to maybe see if the publicist can shed some light on that. Then we have... I don't ordinarily suspect that I got the wrong pub sheet, but it just clearly describes the book and the author, so that's odd. Okay, all right. Well, anyway. Okay, I think we saw this one already. This comes out in early October. This is... oh, God. Now there's tons of blurbs. Good Lord. Look at all this material. Okay. All right. I don't need any of this. I'm not writing the author's biography. Let's see here. This is a novel called Metropolitan Stories by Christine Coulson. Kind of an eye-opening cover there. And this, let's see, Christine Coulson began her career at the Metropolitan Museum of Art in 1991 as a summer intern in the European Painting Department. Oh, that must have been fun. She returned in 1994, and over the next 25 years rose through the ranks of the museum, working in the Development Office, the Director's Office, and the Department of European Sculpture. And in 2019, she left the Met to write full-time. Interesting. So this is Metropolitan Stories. I'm feeling this is going to be about her art world experiences. Let's see. An essay behind the scenes at the Met, published in the New York Times Style magazine, penned by 25-year veteran of the Metropolitan Museum of Art, Christine Coulson, garnered wide interest when it ran in 2016. Readers were enthralled to take a peek behind the visual wonders of Picasso and Vermeer's, the Temple of Dendura, and the popular American wing, and to be granted behind-the-scenes look at the inner life of the Met staff, coalesced into an eccentric extended family, and the underworld of hallways, offices, studios, storerooms, and tunnels that drive this iconic New York City institution. I think I read that article. I didn't read it in the magazine. I think I read it somewhere else. Maybe linked much later on social media. Here, Coulson imbued life into the seemingly banal, retrieving forgotten moments in the Met's history and expanding our sense of the magic that dwells within. Following the piece's success, the Met granted Coulson a year-long sabbatical during 2017 to write a novel, during which she held a research residency at the New York Public Library and was a visiting artist at the American Academy in Rome. After 25 loyal years building a career at the museum, that story has now grown into Coulson's enchanting debut novel. So this is her debut. Very pretty thing from Other Press. Great. Fantastic. This is a love letter to the Met and a powerful ode to the lives lived for art. Okay, but that's nonfiction. That's a memoir. Did you actually write a novel is going to be my question when I'm reading this. Metropolitan Stories weaves magical realism to expose the inner workings of this legendary institution. Kernels of truth radiate from the heart of many of the chapters, people, places, rituals, events, which are then fused with Coulson's imagination and aptly shaped into indelible vignettes. Oh, this is still not describing fiction. This is still not describing... okay. With echoes of Jane Turner Ryland's Venetian stories and Julian Barnes' The History of the World in 10.5 chapters, Coulson relies on a mix of truth and fiction to capture the wonder that radiates through the Met. Okay. All right. Okay. So, all right. So this is... I don't know what I'm going to encounter here. Maybe that's a good way to go at a book like this. I don't know what I'm going to encounter. It doesn't sound like I'm going to encounter any fiction. But maybe it will be, fascinating despite that. Okay, all right. We'll give it a try. I will give it a try, and again, I will report back. This is odd to get two categorical blurrings in a row. It doesn't sound like there's any way that this will be fiction. If you yourself, if your own sell sheet is calling it a mixture of fiction and nonfiction, then why does it need to? Fiction will have a plot. It will have character development and a character arc. It will have the things we go to fiction for. It will have invented dialogue. It will have tense moments. It will have carefully orchestrated, extremely artificial moments of fictional revelation. It will do what fiction does, what we'd use fiction for. You don't call it that if that's not what you're doing. So I'll have to see. I'll have to see. All right, so let me get to this last one, and then we'll be done. This has been a somewhat confusing mail haul, but that's okay. This last one is fairly heavy, so could be something. Ooh, oh my, okay. Right, this is out already. This is late getting me, but that's okay. That is very much okay. Oh my. All right, this is out already. But this is from Yale University Press. This is by David Bounds, Chris Nix, City Holloway, and Sam Mullins, and it is called Hidden London. It's wrapped in plastic here. Hidden London. Discovering the Forgotten Underground. Oh my, I love books like this. Just love them. Hidden London is lavishly illustrated history of disused and repurposed London underground spaces. Oh my. It provides the first narrative of a previously secret and barely understood aspect of London history. Oh, this has been written about before, hasn't it? The abandoned London underground spaces has been the subject of books before this. This is not the first one, is it? I don't think so. I want to ask Jason Harrigan, what's in your collection on this? Behind locked doors and lost entrances lies a secret world of abandoned stations, redundant passageways, empty elevator shafts, and cavernous ventilation ducts. And in the New York subway system, also mole people. The Tube is an ever-expanding network that has left in its wake hidden places and hidden spaces. Hidden London opens up the lost worlds of London's underground and offers a fascinating analysis of why underground spaces have fallen into disuse and how they have been repurposed. With access to previously unseen archives, architectural drawings, and images, the authors create an authoritative account of London's hidden underground story. Now, that I would believe that this is authoritative, but it's not the first narrative of this subject, I don't think. This surprising and at times myth-breaking narrative interweaves spectacular, newly commissioned photography of disused stations and underground structures today. Okay, well, since I read and love the mole people, my number one question is, do people live in these spaces? In every other major metropolitan area that has these kinds of abandoned subway spaces deep down beneath it, there are people living there, not just visiting, not just taking shelter from a bad snowstorm, but living there all the time. They come up above ground to forage for food, and then they go back down and live there. And now I want to know, are there people living in hidden London? But, it's not fair. Now that I think of it, since we're doing these mail hauls together, and since you're doing me the courtesy of letting me talk about my mail with you, it's not fair for me to not show you this. Let's show you a couple of pictures here. This is lavishly illustrated. What have we got here? Okay, so it has blueprints. Number one thing, it has blueprints. Oh man, look at that! Imagine walking down there. How long has it been since crowds went down a space like that? How long? Oh man. Okay, this is South Kensington. Here, look at this is what the book does all throughout. Here you have archival photos of what the station looked like in its prime, and there it is now. Look at that. Incredible. Oh, this is going to be so much fun to go through. I wonder if the authors will even deal with my question, my admittedly weird question. I wonder if they'll even deal with it, on whether or not there are people who live in these spaces, and whether or not their space is even lower than these. Oh, this is going to have so much on, for instance, Euston Station. Oh man! And I'm glad that the book includes blueprints. Look at that, straight down a stairway. Incredible! Oh my! This includes blueprints, and I'm glad that it does that. See, look at that. There's Clapham Tunnel. Look at that. I'm glad that it does that. Not a lot of these books do that, and I think they help a lot. Oh wow! Look at there. Here you are. You're all dining together in the station cafe, and there it is. Oh, man. Okay. All right. This is a treat. It's late getting to me, but I might still write about it. This is a treat. Fantastic. Okay. So we started and ended on a strong note here. So we end with hidden London. Buried and disused London underground stations. Can't help but remind me of Alex Day. Some of you won't know that name. Some of you, if you've been on YouTube long enough, you will. Alex Day was an extremely popular YouTuber 10 years ago, 7 years ago. One of the first people to hit 1 million subscribers. Really, really talented songwriter and song producer, and also song popularizer. Good musician who was embroiled in a scandal, in a prototypical social media scandal. Where one person after another, one young woman after another, some preteens came forward saying that he had been overbearing or grabby or presumptuous or manipulative to them, using his fame in totally inappropriate ways. And he was destroyed. His life was destroyed. At the time that scandal broke, he had a popular and engaging YouTube channel and a book deal with Penguin to write about the London Underground. Not hidden spaces, but just the London Underground. Traveled every inch of the London Underground, got all sorts of stories, talked to all sorts of people, had a sort of a very engaging anecdotal style writing about his adventures on the London Underground. And that book deal was canceled. It was an early iteration of what we now refer to as cancel culture. And, I mean, one of the hallmark features of cancel culture is a complete lack of human empathy. If you have ever done or said anything that contravenes the current year wisdom, then you must be destroyed. You must be rendered reduced to a point where you cannot earn a living even bagging groceries, where you are hounded, where there's a cadre of people whose job it is to watch what you do. If you apply to a job, their job is to flood your manager with threatening and ominous messages about how, if you hire this person, your whole chain will be boycotted. And just to do that from spot to spot to spot, not because the person is still in the spotlight and still offending the current mores, but because you don't want them to be able to earn any money to feed themselves. You actually want to cancel them literally, and this is the way you're going about it. It's easy to look back on that scandal. Sooner or later there will be, in fact there is a documentary about Alex Day, but I think sooner or later there will be a more comprehensive documentary about the whole phenomenon. And when you look back at it now, it's easy to see that there was a large amount of that story that was blown out of proportion. There were a large number of those anecdotal stories that were just nothing. And I don't know. It's difficult to know what to think of Alex Day. My heart goes out to anybody who has a book contract canceled for any reason. He went on to self-publish the London Underground book and also another book on that whole scandal, which is a little bit murkier territory because he was hauling in people. He was hiding their real names and blurring a little bit their identities, but you could still tell who they were. People from that story, from that whole scandal, who very much did not want him to include them in his book. And to them and to all the people watching that at the time, it seemed a complete proof that he had not learned any lessons about boundaries or personal volition or anything like that. But he was still taking advantage of people for his own purposes. One way or another, I can't. It's an interesting story, and of course, a lot of you who've been on YouTube for a long time probably were watching Alex Day videos and enjoying them. And then all of a sudden, he disappeared for 6 months. And then came back, and all of this stuff started to come to light. He was abandoned by all of his online friends, all of this cadre of people who've been making videos in a sort of quasi-community together. He was publicly abandoned by all of them, still is. But anyway, oh yeah, he's on my mind because this is about the London Underground, and that it's hard not to think about that. But this is a completely different thing. This is a big picture book about the creepy spaces. I wonder how easy it is to get into Euston Station, for instance. I wonder how easy it is to get into these spaces. They obviously can't be guarded. So I wonder how easy it would be to get into this tunnel and what you would find if you went down there. I don't know. Let's see here. Then we have Ingenious, a new book from Harvard University Press about technology and its perhaps unforeseen consequences. We have Serotonin, a new novel in translation by Michelle Houellebecq. We have Independence Square by A.D. Miller. We have Dog, it's a fairly typical little tour of dogs in history and art and biology. Then we have Song of Songs by Sylvie Baumgartel, which is called a poem. I'll have to see what's going on there. And Metropolitan Stories by Christine Colson, which is called a novel. So again, I'll have to see what's going on there. But a fairly varied mail haul. And I don't know if there's more mail coming today. I plan on a couple of other videos, including one possible surprise. It's just possible. For myself, I can guarantee my own actions. I can't guarantee other people, but it's possible that I might have a surprise coming your way later today. A change of pace. But if not that, certainly more mail, or maybe a little TBR torture. You're not done with this face today. But I'll wrap this up for now, and I will experiment with yet another filming location to see if I can get rid of at least a little of this ridiculous backlighting. So I'll see you then. Thank you, BookTube.